This really happened to me, and I'm not proud of how petty I became, only that it worked. I'm telling it because it still tastes like metal in my mouth when I think about it. My best friend was using my Netflix password behind my back, and 3 months later I used hers to expose her affair in her own living room. It began with a chipped red Roku remote on my coffee table in Logan Square, the blue standby light blinking against a rain-streaked Chicago window while 6 of us crowded around. A bowl of popcorn for true crime. Thursday. We were gathered there because we always were, the sort of ritual that makes a city feel smaller, and when the "Who's Watching" screen popped up, I saw a profile with my old nickname, on an account that wasn't mine. That's when I realized the humiliation was already in progress. If you genuinely enjoy our stories, please subscribe to the channel, tell us where you're from, and what time it is right now. It's always fascinating to know how far our story flows. 2 years earlier, when Bree and I first became inseparable, we bonded over cheap rosé and the kind of TV shows you watch with your brain at half-light. She went by Bree, short for Brielle, and she had the glossy, careless beauty that made bartenders lean forward. We met at a mutual friend's improv show at I.O., and then discovered we both worked in marketing. She at a boutique PR firm in River North, me at a nonprofit on Michigan Avenue. We fell into sisterhood fast. We traded coats, lipstick, hangovers, and, when my apartment building's Wi-Fi went haywire during a snowstorm, passwords. "You're a saint," she'd said, taking my phone to text herself my Netflix login. "I'll just use it until AT&T fixes my modem." AT&T fixed it in 2 days. Months later, I forgot to ask for my password back, which is how it goes with best friends. Shared rides, shared tabs, shared excuses. By the time she got engaged to Evan, sweet, steady Evan with a dimple like a thumbprint, honestly, I still hadn't thought about it. We went to dinner at Girl and the Goat on Randolph. We did a weekend at a cabin in Door County. We cried in the bathroom at the Hoxton when her mom said the wrong thing at the wrong time. She was the thunder, and I was the lightning, or maybe the reverse. We were the show. People at Pequod's would turn to watch us laugh, like, "Those girls again," but there were hairline cracks. Bree liked to borrow and forget, to ask and then mock you for keeping score. She would talk about Evan's faults in that breezy confessional way that feels harmless until you realize she's building a case. She told me he was too nice, which I didn't know was an insult until I watched her use those words as a mallet. And when I met Tyler at her office, her creative director, married, loud laugh, something tightened in my throat like a seatbelt. He was the kind of person who says your name too often, to make it clear he knows it. The humiliation arrived slowly, like lake effect snow, pretty until it's heavy. On that Thursday in late May, Chicago already humid, the air thick, I'd planned true crime in my place because my living room fit us like Tetris. I cued Netflix on my TV. "Who's Watching?" popped up. Maya, guest, and an unfamiliar profile picture of a panda, bright-eyed and ridiculous, named Peaches. My nickname from college. No one in that room knew it except Bree, who was standing by the snack counter with her shoes already off, which is how she always was, ready to belong. "Whose account is this?" I said, half laughing. "Because there's a way to ask questions when you still want to be liked." Bree flicked her wrist. "Mine," she said. "But look at your little panda! I named it after that story you told me. Why is it on my TV?" She shrugged. "You said yours kept logging out." I hadn't. My mouth dried out. I watched her take the remote, saw her flick into Peaches, saw the continue watching carousel. It was like staring at a stranger's fridge. Between documentaries and cooking shows was a stack of romantic comedies I'd never touched, and a neon-titled series, Love and Lies Miami, floating to the front. 5 episodes deep. "Good, that trash," she said, grinning like it was harmless. "You're welcome." I let it go because I loved her, and because the bag of popcorn was hot and my friends were lowering themselves onto the couch, and because I didn't want to be a nag. But that night, after everyone left and I turned off the lamps, I stared at my own account on my phone, and remembered how long ago I'd given her my login. I logged into my Netflix on my laptop, navigated to manage access and devices, and swallowed. There were devices I didn't recognize using my account, in places I hadn't been. Rosemont, The Loop, Westtown, and then, 3 weeks prior, an Apple TV session in West Loop at 1:12 a.m. The next morning I texted her, forcing my tone into a smile. "Hey Queen, do you still need my Netflix login or did you switch to yours?" She replied instantly, "LOL, yours logged me out months ago, I'm good." Love you, my love curdled. After work that day, walking down Michigan past the stone lions at the Art Institute, wind flipping my scarf, I couldn't shake the off-kilter feeling. I ducked into the Starbucks on Wabash, found a table by the window, and opened my laptop like it could steady me. On my account, I clicked sign out of all devices. It felt decisive. Final. I walked home under the L with my headphones in, feeling like I'd cut a cord and the boat would drift back to me. That night, my phone buzzed. "Bree, OMG Netflix is tripping. Can you send me your login again?" I stared at it for a long breath. I typed, deleted, typed, "I thought you said you were good." 3 dots. Then, "Evan effed something up with our Apple TV, lol, we're on yours for now if that's okay." "I'll Venmo." I didn't answer. 20 minutes later, "Hello?" It was like she was poking my shoulder, harder. I turned my phone face down on the counter like a severed eye. When I flipped it again, a new text had arrived. "Different tone. You good?" I typed, "Busy." Then I opened Instagram out of habit and saw Bree's story, a boomerang of an old-fashioned at Lazy Bird in the Hoxton, Chicago, captioned, "Thirsty Thursday." An hour later, a shot of her feet propped on a velvet ottoman in a dim room. Hotel lighting, unmistakable. No tag, no Evan. The timestamp matched the Apple TV session I'd seen on my account 3 weeks prior, West Loop, near the Hoxton. My stomach sank like a coin in water. I closed Instagram and stared at my reflection in the laptop screen. Tired eyes, lipstick still on like a lie. That was when I remembered the night we'd pre-gamed at hers in River North months ago, and she'd airplayed her photos to her TV to show me dresses. She'd typed in her Apple ID password in front of me, not out loud, but with the carelessness of a person who believed the world would hold her. She reused everything. Everyone knew it. The shape of her secrets wasn't a lock. It was a circle. Before I say what I did next, know this. I was hurt. I felt used, cheaper than a monthly subscription. I felt turned into a utility, light switch, faucet, the thing you forget until it doesn't work. And I thought of Evan. Sweet Evan, who brought me Stan's donuts after my bad dentist appointment. Evan, who had once texted me to ask what perfume to buy her because he didn't want to accidentally choose his favorite instead of hers. I didn't want to be hell, but I didn't want to be furniture either. The next night, I asked Bree to come over to plan her bridal shower playlist because I knew she'd say yes to anything that let her be adored. She came with a tote bag and a can of wine. We sat side by side on my couch, our knees touching, scrolling through Spotify and arguing about whether Robin was too obvious. She borrowed my iPad because my laptop was dead. She logged into Spotify using her Facebook, a password I'd watched her type 100 times in bars and airports. Her thumbs tapped with muscle memory. When she went to the bathroom, I flipped to the Notes app and jotted the shape of it. The capital letters, the punctuation, the inevitable exclamation at the end like a childish stamp. Back then, I thought revenge would be delicious, a sugar rush to suck from my teeth later. Instead, it was work. It was staying up late with a second cup of coffee, cross-referencing times. It was learning how Netflix showed recent device streaming activity, learning that it listed the city and time. It was noticing Bree's book club nights were the same nights a guest room TV in West Loop accessed Love and Lies. Miami at 2:03 a.m. It was the realization that hotel TVs, some, were logged as Apple TV or Chromecast with names that included the hotel network's label. It was seeing cast Apple TV, guest, in a screenshot like a riddle that was also an answer. I needed one more thing. To be sure I was right, not just angry. Which is why, when the Hoxton offered a summer rooftop event in July and Bree suggested we go just us girls, I said yes and wore a dress that made me remember my own body. In the elevator, the mirrored walls multiplied us until it felt like a warning. We drank 2 cocktails in quick succession, and she told me Tyler had gotten her a jewelry gift because I crushed that Pet It and Fix account, and I stared at the way she blew on her straw, as if performing casual. On the walk to the Blue Line later, under the orange spill of streetlights, a drunken pickup truck honked at us, and Bree made a face and looped her arm through mine. "Thank God for Evan," she said lightly. "Men are so feral." I squeezed her hand so I wouldn't say anything unforgivable. At home, my apartment hummed with the same loneliness as always. I opened my laptop. I guessed the rest of her password. It took 2 tries. On the second I was in, a red N blossomed on the screen. "Welcome back, Brielle." I clicked Account, Manage Access and Devices. There it was, a list too honest to ignore. Chicago, IL, Apple TV, yesterday 12:41 a.m. Chicago, IL, iPhone, 4 hours ago. Chicago, IL, Apple TV, guest, Hoxton Wi-Fi, 3 weeks ago, 1:12 a.m. It wasn't her Netflix password I'd used. It was the version of herself she'd been handing out like flyers for years. Same pattern, same hubris. I sat there in the glow of the laptop, heart slamming, and I took screenshots until my hands steadied. Then I closed everything, cleared the cache, and stared out at Milwaukee Avenue flashing with sirens. I wanted to sleep and couldn't. I wanted to forgive and couldn't. I wanted to burn it all down and terrifyingly could. Which is when I decided my proof wouldn't be a text or a fight. It would be something no one could unsee. I had the idea while standing in line at Lou Malnati's the next day, when a toddler in a Cubs jersey pointed at the TV on the wall and shouted, "That!" The word was both demand and discovery. This now. I realized I didn't need to confront Bree in private and risk her turning it into crazy friend jealous of attention. I needed to put the truth on a screen so she'd have to deal with it in widescreen, and I knew exactly when the audience would be assembled. The Sunday after next was her engagement party. Evan's parents had booked the upstairs at the Dawson in West Town, a room with exposed brick and big windows and AV equipment included. There would be a slideshow. We'd been gathering photos for weeks. I was the one who had the HDMI dongles, the adapters, the skills. I was the friend who could fix the sound when Uncle Joe said he couldn't hear. I was the one everyone trusted to make things work, so I would. I texted Evan, "Want me to run the slideshow Sunday?" "I'll bring my laptop so it's bulletproof," he replied. "You're an angel. Please, I owe you a lifetime of donuts." "You don't," I typed, and deleted, and instead sent a smiley face. Then I put my phone down, closed my eyes, and promised to do this only if I could do it clean. No lies, no catfishing, no illegal hacking. Only screens, only truth, only what she had already put in the world. But when I let myself imagine it, the way the room would hush, the way Bree would flick her hair and laugh and then stop laughing, I felt a thrill that scared me. I told myself I wasn't a monster. I was a mirror. The difference is paper thin, especially in low light. The morning of the party, I woke before my alarm, rain tick-ticking the window. I stood under the shower until the mirror blurred and ran through every step, every file path, every way this could go wrong. Backup cable. Backup cable. Screenshots saved in a folder buried 3 deep with a name she'd never see. A slideshow in Keynote set to auto-advance into a browser window, then out again, like a wave that had always planned to break. At noon, I zipped everything into my backpack and told myself, out loud, do this or stop forever. My voice sounded like a stranger's. On my way out the door, I caught sight of myself in the hall mirror and flinched. I looked like someone I'd judge. Hard mouth, determined eyes. I softened my expression, practiced an innocent shrug, and went to meet the day I'd been building like a bomb. I took the blue line to Grand, walked west with the smell of wet pavement rising around me, my phone buzzing with group chat jokes. The Dawsons' private room was already glowing with strings of lights. Evan waved, wide smile, tie crooked. Bree was late. Bree was always late. Our AV queen, Evan's mom said, hugging me. Evan gave me the USB with the photos. You're the best, he said, and I felt my skin prickle with shame and certainty in unequal measure. I set up the slideshow, sound check, checked the transitions, took a breath. At 2:10, Bree breezed in, rain on her hair like glitter, kissed Evan's cheek with an exaggerated moi, and mouthed to me, thank you. Then to the room, we'll start in 5. 5 minutes later, the lights dimmed. The room settled. The projector hummed. Photos of Bree and Evan, Navy Pier Ferris wheel, Montrose Beach with gulls wheeling overhead, an overexposed selfie in front of the bean, rolled one into the next. Evan squeezed her hand. People oohed at the childhood shots. The music I'd cued swelled at the right moments. I stood at the AV table, pulse drumming in my neck, a single click away from detonating my plan, and then my laptop froze. For half a second, the track skittered to silence. The cursor beach-balled. My throat closed, but my fingers were already moving. I forced a smile, clicked escape, and the slideshow collapsed into the desktop. I felt 100 eyes on the back of my neck. Bree laughed lightly from the front like she was helping. Tech, she said. Am I right? She made a little face that said, my friend's trying. Give me 1 sec, I said, and my voice sounded calm. On the projector, my desktop appeared. Folders named innocuous things. I moved the cursor to Keynote again and paused. I opened Safari instead. And in the grainy glow of the projector, the Netflix account page filled the screen. For a heartbeat, no one understood what they were seeing. Then I clicked Manage Access and Devices, and I watched the color drain from Bree's face like sand from a broken hourglass. Chicago. IL Apple TV guest, Hoxton Wi-Fi, May 27th, 1:12 a.m., Chicago. IL Apple TV, June 12th, 12:41 a.m., Chicago. L iPhone, June 12th, 2:10 a.m. I didn't say a word. I let the room read. The silence stretched, taut as wire. Evan leaned forward. Bree? He said, and his voice was soft and bewildered. A boy holding a broken wing. The whole party seemed to tilt toward her. I could feel heat rising off my skin like a fever breaking. Bree did what she always did. She laughed. Too loud. This is Maya? She turned to me, eyes glittering with something cornered. What is this, a joke? I clicked back to the slideshow without speaking. 2 more photos of childhood, Bree with popsicles, Evan in a tiny Cubs cap, splashed onto the screen, absurdly bright. Then I clicked again, into Instagram, into Bree's story archives, to the boomerang at Lazybird the same night Netflix had logged her at the Hoxton, timestamps neat and damning. I didn't have to say anything. It was all there, the way daylight sits on a table and refuses to be argued with. Evan's mother made a sound like a drop of water hitting a hot pan. Evan let go of Bree's hand slowly, like he wasn't sure he had one. Bree inhaled once, twice, and then she smiled again, smaller and more feral. This is insane, she said. We were with clients those nights, asked Tyler. Don't, I said, before I could stop myself. Just don't. And then Tyler walked into the room, late and rain damp, saw the screen, saw Bree's face, and stopped dead. For a second, nobody moved. Then someone near the bar whispered, "Oh, that's when Bree threw her champagne glass. It didn't hit me." It shattered against the brick wall with a sound like a punctuation mark, and the room exhaled all at once. Sudden talking, the scrape of chairs. Evan said Bree's name like he was trying to pick it up off the floor. Tyler took a step forward and then back like a coward. I stood still, hands on the table, and waited for the world I knew to finish collapsing so I could crawl out. Evan turned to me, eyes shiny. How did you logged into her account? His jaw clenched. With what? Her password, I said. The same one she used to log into mine for months. Someone turned off the music that had started up again by accident. The room went quiet as a church. Bree made a strangled sound, then lifted her chin, fighting for air like a drowned person. So you're a hacker now? She bared her teeth. You jealous? Of my life? I could have said I was jealous of nothing. That I was jealous of being allowed to be ugly in private. That I was jealous of not needing to keep receipts. Instead, I told the truth. I was tired of being furniture. Evan's father, who'd been standing up like a monument, sat back down. Evan looked at the screen again, the timestamps catching the light like fish scales. His voice was almost gentle. Is it true? Bree opened her mouth, closed it. Made a sound like a laugh. This is insane, she said again, but softer. You're insane. That was my cue to close the laptop, to leave the room, to let them argue in the ruins I had made. But the thing about lighting a match is you can't unlight it. The smoke will find its own way out. I zipped my bag with hands that trembled and stepped back, focusing on the roughness of the floor under my heels, the heat in my palms, the tilt of the projector's lens. Wait, Evan said, and his voice was not gentle anymore. Are you sleeping with Tyler? The entire room held its breath like a lung. That's when Tyler, who always said people's names too often, said the only word he could think of. Bree. She flinched like the syllable was a slap. I didn't stay to watch them unravel sentence by sentence. I stepped into the hallway, where the rain sounded kinder. I pressed my forehead against the cool plaster and tried to breathe through the adrenaline spike that felt like I'd run the lakefront trail end to end. From inside, I heard voices rising, then flattening, then rising again. Love trying to argue with logic and losing. I would have stayed gone, too, if I hadn't realized something. I had left the HDMI still connected. The screen in the other room still mirrored my laptop, glowing with whatever page it landed on. If someone touched the trackpad, if someone bumped the table, anything could happen. The thought made me nauseous. I straightened, wiped my palms on my dress, and went back inside to unplug. As I stepped through the doorway, I saw Bree do the one thing I'd been waiting for and dreading. She saw me, and she smiled. Her mouth said sweet as frosting. Found you. She picked up my laptop. The next week was an awful montage. Texts from mutual friends full of exclamation points and question marks. A call from my mother who'd heard from someone's aunt that I'd done something at a party. The split of our friend group like a river hitting a rock. On Monday, my boss asked if I was okay. On Tuesday, someone from Bree's office I barely knew sent me a DM that just said, "You did what a lot of us were afraid to." On Wednesday, Bree posted an Instagram with a caption about boundaries and a photo of flowers. Comments full of women telling her to protect your peace. On Thursday, Evan texted me, "Can we talk?" We met at the Wormhole in Wicker Park because the coffee is good and there's a DeLorean in the front that makes everything feel already like a story. Evan looked pale. He put his hands on the table like evidence. "You knew," he said, voice low. "For how long?" "I suspected," I said. "I knew when I saw the device activity." "I wanted to be wrong." He nodded slowly. "She told me you made it up." "I didn't." "I know," he said. "She told me it was Tyler's account, and you spoofed the data." He stopped, disgusted with the words. "I'm sorry you were the one to show me. That's a bad job for anyone." He stared at the ceiling for a moment. "Do you think she gave my login to other people?" He asked suddenly, and I blinked. "What?" "For Hulu," he said. "Spotify. I keep getting weird recommendations." I thought of how Bree treated the cloud like a purse she could dump out on any surface. "Maybe," I said. You should change your passwords. I did, he said. I changed everything. Tyler resigned for family reasons a week later. Bree took a week off for her mental health, and then came back with a haircut so sharp it looked like a shield. On Slack, mutual friends wrote me privately that Bree had tried to float a story about me being obsessed with her, about me stalking her accounts. It might have worked if she weren't famously careless with logins. It might have worked if she had been kinder to the people she considered useful. Power leaches speed when the room stops accepting your version of the wind. I let the narrative roam because my proof wasn't a rumor. It was a timestamp. But Bree had one more move. She always did. 2 Fridays after the party, my boss got an email from a burner account implying I'd used illegal means to access a private account, with my full name and a threat of legal options. I only knew about it because my boss called me into her office, slid a printout across the desk, and said gently, "This is thin, but it's upsetting." I read the email twice. It was written in that particular font of Bree, breathless, smug, sure it would be believed because she'd written it. Heat crawled up my neck. "I didn't hack anything," I said. "I logged into Netflix using a password she reused publicly, and I displayed account pages that were already accessible to any logged-in user. I have screenshots of her using my Netflix for months, documented." My boss nodded. "I trust you," she said. "But if she escalates, we'll need to be clean." The word clean pinballed around my skull all night. Clean, clean. I opened my folder of screenshots again at my kitchen table with a bowl of cereal going soggy at my elbow. I cataloged them by date in a Google Drive doc. I wrote an affidavit, which I didn't need but which made me feel organized. A timeline of device activity, Instagram posts, receipts I'd Venmo'd her when she forgot her wallet. I wrote an email to myself describing exactly how I'd formed her password guesses. Pattern-based, no brute force, no software, and I CC'd my personal account so there was a trail. The following Monday, a letter arrived at my apartment, thick with threat. It wasn't from a lawyer, just an online template mail merge with her name at the bottom. It used words like trespass and unlawful. I read it standing by my mailbox and laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was so like her to try to summon a courthouse out of thin air. But my laugh tasted wrong. Because she was still dangerous, just by being shameless. Because she wanted the world to believe I was a witch and she was a village. I called a real lawyer, Zoe, a friend of a friend who took me to lunch at Beatrix and asked me to tell her everything like we were gossiping, and it had consequences. She listened, frowned in the right places, asked to see the screenshots. When she finished, she tapped her pen against the table. "You're fine," she said. Morally murky, sure, but not criminal. She reused a known password pattern and handed out her logins like party favors. "Your bigger risk is defamation, but only if what you projected was false." It wasn't. Also, congratulations on being meticulous. "I thought I was being crazy," I said. "You were being thorough," she said and smiled. "There's a difference." Zoe wrote a short, sharp letter on letterhead to Bree's burner account and to Bree's actual email, essentially saying, "Speak to us again, and we'll see you in actual court with actual truth." The burner email stopped. My shoulders dropped slightly lower on my spine for the first time in weeks, but then Bree did something none of us predicted. She showed up at my door. It was a Wednesday night, and I was in socks with a face mask on, watching a documentary about a French con artist, irony stirred in a mixing bowl, when my buzzer buzzed. "Who?" I said, because in Chicago you always ask. "Me," she said. I should have said no. I should have turned off the lights and made my apartment go loose as an empty stage. Instead, I let her up because part of me wanted to look her in the eye and find the girl from 1,000 Hangovers. She came in without waiting, as if my place were still hers too. She stood in the entryway and rubbed her arms like she was cold. "I can't believe you did that," she said. "You used my Netflix for months," I said. "And you used your Netflix to watch TV in hotel rooms while your fiancé was home." She rolled her eyes like a teenage queen. Everyone uses everyone's passwords. So it's communal until it's inconvenient, I said. You lied, Bree. That part isn't communal. She sighed, sat on my armchair, then popped back up like it was hot. I'm not here to fight, she said, which is what people say right before they fight. I'm here because you humiliated me. You made me look like a cliché. I didn't make you do anything, I said. She walked to my window and looked out at Milwaukee Avenue pulsing with buses. Do you remember when you cried in the Hoxton bathroom because your dad forgot your birthday? She said softly. I held your hair back. I bought you fries. I loved you. I remember, I said. I loved you too. She turned, smiled a sliver. Then why did you pick him? Because the truth mattered, I said. And because he wasn't the one lying to me every day. She flinched, just a flash, then shrugged it off. He's a boy, she said. He'll be fine. She waved a hand to encompass Evan's goodness like a piece of furniture. He'll marry someone who bakes sourdough. We stood there in the small, tired silence that happens after a storm, when you're deciding whether to rebuild in place or leave. Bree looked around my apartment like she was cataloging what to miss. She put her hand on the back of my couch, then lifted it, leaving a print in the dust. You really wrote yourself into the hero of this, huh? She said, smiling with no humor. The girl who exposed the bad man and the bad woman with a screen and a conscience. I wrote myself out of being used, I said. She tilted her head. You think people will still come over for true crime Thursdays? I do, I said, though I wasn't sure yet. She walked to the door. One day they'll get bored of your righteousness, she said, and her voice was almost kind. Rage is a fun story until it isn't. I'll risk it, I said. She paused with her hand on the knob and said the last truly awful thing she had to say. You didn't do it for him, she said. You did it to me. She left before I could answer, which was just as well, because the answer was complicated. I locked the door and leaned my forehead against it and let myself cry like someone peeling off a bandage, fast and ugly. The next month was quieter. Friendships reformed along new lines. Evan moved out of the apartment he'd shared with Bree in River North. He sent my nonprofit a donation in my name with a note that said, "Thank you," which made me put my head on my desk and laugh until it hurt. Tyler posted a photo of a lake at sunset with a caption about new chapters, which nauseated me in a way I couldn't articulate. On a Monday in late August, the sky the color of a bruise before rain, I had friends over for the first True Crime Thursday since the party. We set the bowl of popcorn on the coffee table. The chipped red Roku remote waited. The blue standby light blinked. What are we watching? Tasha asked, dropping onto the couch. Not Love and Lies, Miami, I said, and the room cracked up. We pulled up Netflix. Who's Watching appeared. There was only one profile, mine. No pandas, no peaches, no clutter of borrowed selves. I clicked it. It felt like turning on a lamp in a room I'd been afraid to enter. The documentary started. The rain spattered the window. The people I loved laughed too loudly. I watched their faces like a movie and thought, this is what power feels like when you keep it. Not a shout. A door you can lock without apology, except, because the past is rude, the recent device streaming activity page sat in my memory like a tab I hadn't closed. The Hoxton line, the 1:12 a.m., the way Bree's lips had thinned. I told myself I had done the thing and now I could leave the thing. But the world kept knocking. I saw Bree again, of course. Chicago is big until it isn't. I saw her by the farmer's market in Logan Square one Sunday morning in September, hair in a low bun, sunglasses like a verdict. She saw me too. We both paused. She lifted her coffee cup in a little salute that could have been peace or poison. I nodded. We kept walking, two ghosts who'd agreed to haunt different houses. 2 weeks later, a text arrived from an unknown number. You ruined her life. Hope you're proud. My stomach dropped. I deleted it and turned my phone off. I went for a walk along the Riverwalk while the bridges lifted for sailboats and thought about shame and accountability and the ways they wear each other's clothes. I bought a hot dog and ate it standing up, the way sins are eaten in old stories. On a cold night in October, Evan asked if I would meet him one more time. We met at Bang Bang Pie and Biscuits because healing like pie is easier in a room that smells like butter. He brought me a slice of key lime and said, I filed to cancel the venue, and smiled like he'd just come in from a swim. Do you know what felt weird? When I changed my Netflix password. He laughed softly. It felt like a breakup text. Passwords are vows, I said. Stupid ones, but still, he nodded. Do you think I should have seen it sooner? No, I said. You saw it when you were safe enough to look. He held my gaze. Are you? I thought of my locked door, my clean account, my quiet Thursdays, the way my hands didn't shake when I used my laptop now. Getting there, I said. He reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Thank you, he said, and I realized he meant it in 4 directions at once. We both laughed in that watery way people laugh when they're not drowning anymore. After he left, I sat there a long time with the empty plate, forks clinking around me, the cafe warm with strangers whom I loved an unreasonable amount. Then I paid, went home, and did the last thing I should have done months earlier out of love for my future self. I changed every password I had, to things that didn't look like me at all. People think revenge is dramatic, but it's mostly paperwork and patience. It's knowing when to wait, when to hold the microphone to the room and let the noise explain itself. It's turning a screen into a mirror and accepting that sometimes you're in the frame too. I'm not a hero. I'm a woman who learned the hard way that boundaries are only real if you can point to them when the sky gets loud. Weeks later, I opened Netflix and saw a new original series advertised across the top. Some glossy thing about betrayal, expensive and red. I laughed and closed the app and turned toward a book, toward sleep. The city hummed outside, steady as a heart. And when the room stilled, when the only light left was the little blue standby on the Roku, I listened to it blink, 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 the most honest metronome I know, and I remembered how quiet a room can be when the only people in it belong. I don't miss Bree the way you miss a person. I miss the version of myself who believed loyalty could fix everything, who thought love and proof were in the same cabinet. But I don't miss being furniture. I don't miss the feeling of my own remote held in someone else's hand. And when I pass the Hoxton on a rainy night and see the elevator glow up through the lobby like a spine, I don't think of her. I think of the moment a room turns toward truth and goes briefly, beautifully silent. There is a kind of justice that never makes a sound. It looks like a login screen with only one name on it. It looks like a set of receipts filed in a neat folder just in case. It looks like a girl standing at a projector in Westtown, the damp hem of her dress clinging to her legs, and choosing not to explain herself with words. Sometimes, when I'm half asleep, I see Bree in a dream, standing in her living room with her hands on her hips, the TV washing her face in ultramarine. Her mouth moves like she's still spinning the story, telling herself it ends differently. In the dream, the remote is on the table between us, within reach of both. I wake up before either of us touches it, and I keep it that way. The end.